All right, let's jump into our next topic here, guys. So Sony has dropped some news through a podcast interview, and I'm not going to go into detail for the interview. You can go find it if you just Google Sony's live action Spiderverse reboot, which is literally what I googled when I started looking information on the story. You'll be able to find it. But basically, in a nutshell, Sony has reported that they are looking at a reboot of their live action Spider-Verse for their other mainline characters like Venom, Morbius, Craven, Madam Web, that kind of stuff, right? So aside from the animated Spider-Verse, which where the fuck is Spider-Verse, the third installment of that, their live action world that they were trying to turn into this kind of cohesive universe, which failed miserably. Even Venom declined in box office numbers and honestly in quality. I didn't even see Venom 3. I just had no interest in it by the time we got to that point. They are looking to reboot it. So one might ask why. If it didn't work the first time, why try again? Especially with those same cast of characters. It's because they have to, right? Like they can't just sit on these characters that they have paid money for and not do anything with them. These are vast characters that a majority of the population of comic book fans love. They just weren't delivered very well in their live action universe. So they have to. They have to do something with these characters. That's the why, right? But what direction should they take these characters in? Obviously, Marvel proper is not going to want to have two Spider-Mans running around. And I think that's been part of their deal for so long, right? But at some point, are they going to continue to share Spider-Man with the MCU? And so here's my, tinfoil hat conspiracy theory here. And it's probably not that big of a stretch, but I haven't seen it out there yet. Again, I keep mentioning that I strongly think that we are going to reboot the MCU post Secret Wars, whether that's a huge reboot, soft reboot, whatever. Like, I'm a firm believer that we are going to have an entirely new slate of characters and an entirely new world and sandbox to play in once we get on the other side of Secret Wars. So I think that is when the Spider-Man partnership with Marvel ends. I think then Sony takes back Spider-Man into their universe and they start building a world around, Spider-Man again. And I don't think it's going to be Tom Holland. I think by this point you look to recast. I think they will probably make at least one more Spider-Man movie with Marvel. So we'll get to Spider-Man 5 post Secret Wars, maybe kind of wrap up that story arc. And you might ask, like, why, if the movies are making money and things like that? Sometimes it's just time to move on for the betterment of your franchise. And if you could always take Tom Holland Spider-Man and throw him into your universe, but everyone's always going to connect that to the MCU. And I don't know if Sony necessarily wants to do that. Not that is a bad thing, but I think that they're probably looking at, unless if they're going to make this long term and then go back to potentially Venom being the, anchor to their universe and things like that away from Spider-Man. I think that they're going to look to be able to get a world where Peter Parker Spider-Man is not Tom Holland anymore. And we're looking to kind of reset this universe. And to be honest, I kind of hope it happens. I think that the MCU itself is overly crowded. And in the comics, it's fine because you can put out 10 different issues of 10 different, titles of comics in a week and tell these multiple storylines, and it doesn't feel overwhelming. But when you're only coming out with 2 or 3 movies a year and you have to try to fit all these characters in it and you have all these high expectations and the universe is always ending, sometimes it's nice to step away and tell a story that isn't about the ending of the multiverse, right? Thunderbolts, for example, was really nice because it wasn't the story. Yeah, ultimately was about the destruction of New York City. I think that's where they ended up at the end of that movie. But it was more about mental health and togetherness and not being alone and all that kind of stuff, right? It was a story about the emotional arc of these characters and not necessarily the world ending. You look at Fantastic Four as well. what was nice about Fantastic Four, even though I didn't love that movie as much as I was hoping I would, what was nice about Fantastic Four was that, yeah, it was about the destruction of their world, but there were true stakes involved because we knew that that universe wasn't a part of our MCU proper. So anything was on the table that could happen, right? And which we'll talk about that world here in just a second. But I think that when you're looking at a Spider-Man live action or Spider-Verse live action reboot for Sony, it just makes sense. It's time to go ahead and really develop a multiverse here with your Spider-Verse that can be profitable, that can make good movies, and that has a cohesive story. You don't just start with Venom like, oh, hey, that was success. Let's do Morbius. Let's do Madam Web. Let's do Craven. Have a genuine thought in mind of how you want to build this universe. Is it going to be as grand as the MCU? No, because you're only talking about certain characters of the Spider-Verse, but there's a lot you can do there. There's a ton that you can do there. And even though I'm sure that there were agreements about obviously no multiple Spider-Man running around in Sony and MCU at the same time, but I wonder if that also involves maybe we get a Scarlet Spider. How cool would that be to be able to kind of explore that storyline and maybe he's the anchor of the Spider-Verse? There's so many different possibilities and things you can do here. It's just time to wash our hands from the mess that we made with Venom and Morbius and Madam Web and get back on track with arguably some of the greatest characters in the Marvel universe as a whole that are in that Spider-Verse. So, what do you guys think? Did you see the news that they're wanting to, or that they're going to reboot this live action Spider-Verse and that they want to be able to do something with these characters? What do you think they should do? What do you want them to do? And is there any characters that, we haven't seen so far that you would be able to love to see? I personally, even though we've gotten glimpses of her in different formats and different movies, I'd love to see Black Cat. I think that would be really fun and kind of seeing how that would play out. So drop your comments below. I'd love to be able to know and hear your thoughts.